Welcome to the season premiere, the fourth season premiere of Preps Plus Extra, the Journal Sentinel's high school sports show. It's been a long summer, but that's still J.R. Radcliffe, sports editor of Now Newspapers, and I'm still Mark Stewart, prep editor of the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. We're here to talk all things football this week, and last week, a major showdown, probably it was become the most anticipated non-conference game of the year. Homestead beat Arrowhead for the second straight year. A big showdown, but moving forward, what's on your mind about those two teams in that particular matchup?
Yeah, maybe not as much juice this year as there was last year when there was still a novelty factor. Those two programs met 3 straight years in the Division I title game. They won't meet again because Homestead's now Division II, so they had the regular season game last year. I think Arrowhead was considered the huge favorite last year, and then Homestead scored a 13-7 win. This year, Homestead's probably the better team on paper, and then they showed it on the field with a 24-20 victory. Still two of the best teams in the area, no doubt about it. And I think what struck me in reading the coverage of it was how Homestead reacted afterwards. They were happy, of course, but not overly impressed. This wasn't a celebration the way that it might have been last year and previous years. It was merely just a victory that, as a veteran team, they expected to pull out, and it's just one step on the path to Madison. And I know I think the fans were chanting just like last year, and there was some reluctance to embrace that because just like last year, Homestead went out in the third level of the playoffs, and Arrowhead went on to win the state title.
Right.
So Homestead hopes this year, the actual ending, it's not just like last year, and that they can carry this through all the way to Camp Randall Stadium. They got a lot of tough teams in Division II. Arrowhead won't be one of them, but teams like Kimberly, so they're going to have their work cut out for them as the season goes on.
Yeah, and the flip side, Arrowhead, obviously it's got to be frustrating from their fan standpoint and probably from their players to lose a big non-conference game like this. But, when I was out at Arrowhead early in the preseason, I was talking with Coach Greg Malling about this, and he was just excited for the game. I mean, so many games we see Arrowhead, and they could beat a lot of these teams 50, 60 to nothing, and they really don't, and a lot of times they kind of keep the score down. They're playing different guys, and they're a lot of times they just don't get that test that maybe they got this past week. And Coach Malling talked about how much they learned from that game last year and how much it exposed where they needed to get better at an early point in the season. And then they were able to improve those things. So time will tell. Arrowhead's more of a junior-oriented team this year, maybe than the past 2 years where they had really strong senior classes. So it'll be interesting, moving forward to see where they kind of take this, I guess this learning experience and how it might help them. So. And
the Classic 8 with Arrowhead now 14-1 through the 2 non-conference games with not quite the full 16 games. Waukesha South lost their season opener when Nicolay canceled their season. But the one loss in the Classic 8 belongs to Arrowhead against Homestead. Kettle Moraines 2-0 for the first time since 2006. Waukesha North under their new coach Matt Harris won a thriller over Watertown to get to 2-0. Waukesha South won their game last week. So I know a lot of, unquestionably the best conference in the area. A lot will tell you the Classic 8's the best conference in the state. That might at least be debatable, but right now the results are backing up what I think everybody assumes about the Classic 8 conference.
Yeah, and that leads to my next question as we move forward. Heck, we're almost a third of the way through the season. A couple of days from now, we're going to be a third of the way through the season. Early season surprises, when you look at this area overall, what's kind of popped out at you that you're going to say, hey, I need to keep an eye out on
Yeah,
this?
certainly the success of the Classic 8, but that's not a surprise. We know that they're a very good conference, so that just the universal success that they've had, Muskego is another one that's 2-0. But looking at the other conferences, I look at the Greater Metro, and I really am puzzled as to how that's going to play out. Traditionally, a lot of good powerhouse programs in there. You've got Menominee Falls, who's very good, Marquette, who won it last year, Sussex Hamilton, who's 0-2 and still kind of feeling things out a little bit. Brookfield Central has new coach Jed Kennedy, a very well-known name around here, the former Bradford coach that won a state championship there. They're 1-1 after losing to Whitefish Bay in week 1 and then beating Bradford, his old stomps, in week 2. Brookfield East is 2-0. West Alice Hale is 2-0. They beat Lake Geneva Badger in week 1, which I thought was a really quality win for them. So there's a lot of mystery surrounding the Greater Metro. If somebody's going to get left out, and I couldn't tell you who. I've got no beat on who's going to win that conference. So I think that's a really interesting one, and I know there's a lot of alums in the area from GMC schools, So there's a lot of mystery there. And back out in Lake Country, one of the more interesting 0-2 teams is Pewaukee. They've lost twice by 1 point. They lost to Waterford, who could win the Southern Lakes on a missed. They missed a PAT with 1:22 to go after they had come close to tying the game. And then against Wisconsin Lutheran, a team that I think most people assumed was the favorite, they scored a pull within 21-20 in the late going, go for two, and don't get it. So they might be one of the best in the area. They have a huge matchup in Week 3 with Greendale that could go a long way in determining the Woodland West title. I mean, they could conceivably be 0-3 and still be one of the best teams around. We wouldn't know because they've had these close calls.
Yeah, and jumping back to the greater metro, West Dallas Hill does, of those schools, they really intrigue me because, well, a couple reasons. One, they've been down the last few years, and two, I just remember a coach or two kind of telling me that, they kind of like the job that that coaching staff has done at Hale the last couple years, and they got a lot of experience coming back. But these upcoming weeks will be telling. They got Falls this week. I believe they have Marquette next week. So 2-0, even though Badger, I think, is the favorite in the Southern Lakes. That was the 17-7 win for Hale in Week 1. When you face those conference teams and they really know what you do intimately, I'm really going to be watching them. Muskego is a team that last year, they had lost a huge senior class from the year before. And Coach Ken Krause, that was probably one of the better, quietly one of the better coaching jobs last year because it seemed like they progressively got better as the year went on. Another experienced team, I believe they got Waukesha West coming up, not this week but next week. That's going to be a telling game. So those are a couple teams that kind of popped out at me. And then in the Wisconsin Little 10. West Bend West coach Jeff Richardson, he's the new coach out there. They're 2-0. They play Slinger this week. Slinger, had a tight loss with Whitefish Bay, but they're one of those teams that, peak coaches in the Wisconsin Little 10 think, might be in the mix for the conference title. So those are, some teams that, traditionally haven't been big winners recently that, at least that, I'm going to be kind of looking at the next couple weeks to say, see if they can kind of, keep this string going.
I was curious to see back in the Woodland how Greendale, after coming off of a state runner-up finish in Division III, how they would bounce back, bringing back their quarterback and a lot of key pieces of their offense. Josh Ringelberg, their quarterback, kind of an all-state kid last year, but having a lot of new faces on the defense. And, we weren't sure where they would shake out. We figured they'd be good, but they went and won. They've won both games in one of the toughest non-conference schedules around to beat Cedarburg, snuffing out a 2-point conversion to hold off that win, and then coming back and beating Franklin, holding a really good Sabres team once again to 14 points. So I'm impressed with their situation, and like I said, that's why I'm so intrigued to see how they'll do against Pewaukee in Week 3. I mean, if they win pretty handily, now you got to start talking about Greendale as a state title contender again in Division 3.
Right. So as we head into Week 3, we're both going to be going out to games this week. You're going out to Mukwonago, Waukesha West. What are you expecting?
Well, I'm excited to see the new field. All the Waukesha facilities got new turf, part of a huge synthetic turf movement, which is another big thing in football. Franklin, Oconomowoc also have new facilities, just to name a few. I mean, that number is growing and growing. So I'm interested to see the facility, but last year that game I think was 45-44. Might be a little off on the numbers there, but it was an overtime game. It was a thriller, had just unbelievable back and forth action, and Waukesha West actually got held on a 2-point conversion that would have given Mukwonago the win. There was a penalty flag, so they got another shot. They got it. They won the game. That was, and I've told people this, that was the best game I saw last year, which is saying something because I saw the 84-82 game between Wisconsin Lutheran and Oconomowoc. I mean, this was just truly on all facets, just an unbelievable competitive game, and I think it can be again this year. I mean, Waukesha West is really, really good. They really have a lot back from last year's team. They were a level 4 team last year, and they bring a ton back, and to the point that I think they're a very viable Division II state title contender. I mean, I mentioned Kimberly, that's still the team to beat, but West is up there. And then Mukwonago lost a lot from last year's level 4 team, but they're still, they're a good program right now with Clay Iverson in his 3rd year. They've built themselves to the point where they should be able to hang year in, year out. So really interested to see how the Classic 8 divides itself this week with everybody being undefeated right now, and we'll see who, this is really a good test to see which one of these teams is going to be one of the elites.
Right. For myself, I'm going to be heading out to Brown Deer to watch South Milwaukee and Brown Deer. Even though it's Week 3 of the season, those two teams are probably the best teams in that division. Definitely. And most likely whoever wins that game this week is going to end up the division champion. And we mentioned this in past years about the Woodland. It's a wild and crazy league. I mean, it could be a wild game. As far as who's going to win. I know South Milwaukee is the defending league champion, but Brown Deer's probably might have the best player on the field with Zach Braun, who's off to a great start, and in his second year as a quarterback, seems like he's a little more comfortable in that position. So that's going to be another exciting tilt. You never know with the Woodland. The wild, wacky Woodland. It's probably the most unpredictable league we got around here. But we'll talk about more of that stuff next week. But that's going to wrap it up for this first edition of Preps Plus Extra. For more Preps Plus action, you can watch me and Lance Allen every Sunday night on TMJ4. Take care.